Hi, welcome to Salesforce Topics channel. In this session, let us discuss about Apex Managed Sharing, which is part of Salesforce record sharing techniques. In some requirements, we may not be able to achieve to share the record using the out-of-the-box managed record sharing techniques like OWD role hierarchy sharing rules, and also users may not be willing to give manually the record sharing for those records. For those kinds of requirement, we will have to go and assign the record sharings programmatically using the Apex. The record sharings that we apply programmatically using Apex are called as Apex Managed Record Sharing. For example, let us assume our service request object custom object has one more custom field that is sold by ID. For each service request, the services team creates the service request record, and in that they will enter vehicle number and vehicle type and billing amount, etc. As part of that record, they will also enter the sold by ID. That means ID of the salesperson who actually sold this vehicle. And now the requirement is, whenever service request is being created, we have to give the read access to the sold by ID. That means this salesperson, whomever sold this vehicle, has to have read access on those service requests created for that vehicle. First, let us see why we cannot achieve this requirement using the managed sharing techniques and user managed sharing technique. So under managed sharing technique, first of all, let's take the OWD. Under OWD, we will be having private, public read-only and public read-write. As per our requirement, we have to assign the read-only access to only the sold by ID. That means there are other persons who should not be able to access that record. As we need to restrict some users to access the records, we have to go with OWD as private. If we go as OWD as public read-only, all the users in the organization will have read-only access. That is not what we wanted to achieve here. And if you go with the OWD as public read-write, all of the users will get read-write permissions on the record. That is not what we wanted to achieve here. We wanted to give read-only access only to the salesperson who sold this item. So after OWD, the next thing that opens up visibility is role hierarchy. Role hierarchy expands the visibility, but role hierarchy expands the visibility to the role hierarchy level itself. That means whomever on top of the user who created the record, those will be getting the full access on those records. For example, here MGR gets the complete access on the LDR1, LDR2, Tech1, Tech2, Tech3, Tech4 records, and also either of these users LDR1, LDR2, Tech1, Tech2, Tech3, Tech4, whatever access they have on the records, for those records MGR also will have the same access via the role hierarchy because he stays on the top of the LDR1 and LDR2. So using the role hierarchy, we will not be able to achieve our requirement because the sold ID is available in the record, and for that person we have to give read-only access. Sharing rules further widens up the visibility of the record, but using the sharing rule we can target to give the record access to the public groups or roles and role subordinates. Here, as we want to apply only the read access to the salesperson who sold this item, this can't be achieved using the sharing rules. And the next sharing technique is the manual sharing. Of course, manual sharing opens up the visibility of the record furthermore, but in this requirement, users are not willing to manually share this record. The read access to the salesperson has to be automatically calculated and given. Our requirement is read access to the salesperson has to be applied automatically, not manually. As we cannot achieve this requirement using the OWD role hierarchy sharing rule manual sharing, we have the final approach, that is supreme approach, that is using the Apex sharing. That is programmatically we are going to achieve this requirement. In order to implement this requirement in Apex programmatically, we should know how Salesforce is managing information on the sharing data for each and every record. For example, for a given service request, how Salesforce knows for which user has access to that record and which access he has on that record. Those information how Salesforce is maintaining. To maintain each record sharings data on each object, Salesforce maintains additional object. That is, for example, for account object, that is standard object, the additional sharing object is going to be account share. And for the custom object, the sharing object name is going to be custom object __ share. So for each records in these actual objects, these corresponding sharing records would be present in the respective share objects. For example, for each account sharing information, it will be maintained in the account share object. And for each record of the myCustomObject information would be maintained in the myCustomObject __ share. Let us see what are all the fields that we have under this share objects. Please note that the fields of the objects are same, but only the difference is the object name. For the standard object, the share is attached to the object name. For custom object __ share is attached to the custom object name. Now let's see what are all the fields that we have for this share object. There are 5 fields that we have under this share object. ID is a common field. For each and every object we would see the ID. Next is parent ID. Parent ID is going to be the actual records ID for which Salesforce is maintaining the sharing information. That is the ID of the record for which the Salesforce is maintaining the access information. This field is going to have the user ID or group ID for whom this record access is granted for. The next field is access level. This access level will have the 3 possible values, that is all, read and edit. This access level field will hold the access level of the record that we are going to grant for the record ID to the user or group ID. Please note that all is reserved for Salesforce internal purpose. We cannot give the all access using the Apex Managed record sharing. The next field is row cause. Here we are going to give the reason for granted access. As we could see, parent ID and user or user group ID are very straightforward fields. The only thing is the possible values of access level and row cause we need to see. Let's see what are all the possible values of the access level. The possible values of the access level depends on the OWD of the object. For example, for our custom object, the OWD is private. In that case, only owners would be able to see. So programmatically using the Apex program, we can give the read and edit access to the other users. That is why the read is allowed and edit is allowed here. But as we discussed, all is only for Salesforce internal. So we are not going to use the all for our Apex Managed sharing programs. And if the OWD is public read only, as we know, owner would get the complete full access and other public would get already a read only access. That is why again programmatically we cannot assign the read access. That is not allowed. Only the access level that is allowed for public read only is edit. If OWD of our object is public read write, then owner of the record is going to get the full access on that record, and on that record remaining public will have public read write access. As all the public in the org already have read write access on that record, we cannot give again read and edit on that record using programmatically. That is why read and edit both are not allowed in this public read write OWT. Now let's look into the rowcast field and what are all the values that are available for the rowcast field. The values of rowcast field depends on the sharing technique that has been applied on the record. For example, we have the sharing techniques like managed sharing, user managed sharing, Apex managed sharing. If it is a managed sharing, the rowcast value could be owner or rule. For example, for a record owner, you would see the rowcast value is owner. And for sharing rule, if the record's access is granted because of the sharing rule, then the value of rowcast you would see as rule. Please note that for role hierarchy, the Salesforce is not going to maintain the record sharing information in this object. It would be dynamically calculated as per the hierarchy that we have defined. And now let's see for user managed sharing, the rowcast values could be manual and a territory manual. Territory manual is only applicable if we have territories in our org. Then finally for Apex managed sharing, the rowcast is going to be the developer's wish. That is, whatever developer defined at this object level, that particular rowcast he can assign in the rowcast. That is, developer is going to give his own name under the rowcast for the Apex managed sharing records. Now let's look into the implementation part in the Apex for this requirement. Here we have our custom object with name service request, which has the fields like name, vehicle number, and sold by ID. As we know, for each and every object, Salesforce maintains corresponding __ share object. So for our custom object service request custom object, Salesforce is maintaining service _request __ share. This __ share object is used to store the record level access of the data for those records under the object service request. Now our requirement is, as soon as somebody inserted a record into the service request object, we have to see the sold by ID, and for that sold by ID, we have to grant read access by inserting a corresponding read access into the service request __ share. That is, soon after we insert a record, we are going to insert a record into the service request __ share by copying the ID of the service request as a parent ID and sold by ID into the user or group ID. So ultimately, as soon as this record is inserted into the service request, we have to insert one more record, that is to give the read access into the __ share table. As we are inserting this access level record after the inserting of the original record, it's better to go for after insert trigger event for this service request object, because it has to happen for each and every new record that is being inserted into the service _ request. So for that, let's create a trigger. I'm giving a name as service request trigger. And here our subject name is service _ request _c, and we want the event that is after insert, the event. So on this object, whenever after insert trigger event happens, we have to insert another record into the __ share table. This switch trigger dot operation type. This operation type we get as after underscore insert. For after insert event, the operation type is going to be after insert. Here we have to write our logic to insert the record into the share table. So instead of directly writing here, let's take our helper method for the service request trigger. So I'm going to create one more class with the name as service request trigger handler. Inside this, I'm going to write one method, public void assign access to seller. See what parameters that we can pass here. And I'm going back to the trigger. Here for after insert, we get two main trigger context variables, that is trigger.new and trigger.newMap. It will contain the new data that we have inserted into the service request object. To know the list of trigger context variables and corresponding values for each and every trigger event, I have explained clearly in my trigger session. I would recommend you to go through those sessions to get the clear idea on how the Salesforce is populating the trigger context variables for each and every trigger event. Now we will pass these parameters into our method. We will call that method here, and we pass these two variables, that is trigger dot new and trigger dot new map. Here we will get the two parameters, that is trigger dot new is going to be the list of type, that is list of service request type, and trigger dot new map is going to be the map of id comma service request. So let's take list of service request underscore c into the new list. Then another parameter is map of id comma service underscore request underscore c. This we will take into the new map. Now under this list, we will get the complete service request data for each and every record that is being inserted. So if it is a bulk operation, we will get multiple records here, and hence Salesforce gives us in the list format in the new variable. To iterate this new list variable, so the type is service request. For each service request, I'm going to take as servic, and the one that I'm going to iterate is new list. In this way, we will get the service request one by one. Now for each service request, we have to insert a corresponding service request underscore share record. So let's take a list of service request underscore share. Service request, and the corresponding share object is service request underscore share. So I'm going to take share and share list is equal to new list of this share object. Now let's create one share object for this service request in the loop. For each service request, we are going to create one share object. So share the corresponding share record we are creating for service request. So new share object. Now we know the fields that we have to populate, that is parent ID, user group ID, access level, and row cost. So what I do, I will select dot parent ID is going to be the ID of the service request. Now the next one is user or user group ID. So share record dot user or user group ID is equal to service request. The one which we need to copy is from the sold by ID. So from the service request sold by ID underscore C, then access level service request dot access level. I'm going to give it as read. Now the next one is row cost. This is important here. So for service request share dot row cost. For this row cost, as it is sharing, we have to create our own row cost. In order to create our own row cost, we have to switch to the classic mode and go to the our service request object, and under our service request object we can see the Apex sharing regions section here. So under this, click on new button. We will give the region label as read access to seller. Copy this API name, click on save. So please note that this would be created on the service request underscore underscore share object, that is schema dot our share object dot row cost. For this row cost, we have created our custom row cost. So that is there over here under Apex Sharings. And if you click on this one, you will get the API name of that row cost that we have created. So I'm going to access that here. Now we have populated all of the fields: parent ID, user or group ID, access level we have given as read, and row cost that we have created, that one we have populated into the service request share object. Now let's add this into the list. And now we can insert this share list. So database insert share list, capturing the results, save result array into save results. Now during the insertion of the share records, if there are any errors, we will get those errors into the save result. Those errors we need to add into the corresponding main object, that is service request object. So let's loop on the save result. The save result will get the database dot save result. And for each save result, We will check whether it is success or not. Save result is success. If it is not success, then only we are going to add the error. So capture the error into error variable from save result get errors 0. Now from this save result we have to get the actual record ID. So for this save result, first we will fetch the corresponding share record that is being inserted. So for that, let's take an integer 0. In the for loop, we will make use of this index. So using this, we will increase the index here for each for loop, and using this you will get the service request share record. And from this, as we know, we have the parent ID is the actual record ID. Once we access the actual ID, in order to get the actual record, we can make use of the new map where we can pass the ID and it will give us the corresponding service request record. So new map dot get of ID, that is this ID. This I'm going to add an error saying unable to give read access. Exception is message. Now save it and let's try to deploy. As it is a custom broadcast, we need to add __c here for the API name, and make sure you are using the without sharing, because by default not all the users will be able to access this rowcast. So in order to handle that one, we are going with a without sharing, so that every user, when they are trying to insert service request, they will be able to access this rowcast, the custom rowcast, and system is able to create the corresponding share record. Oh, it got deployed. Let's try to deploy the trigger code. Now I have logged in as a Tech1 user. I'm going to create one new service request. So create by Tech1 record. So I'm going to give bill amount. Sold by ID, I'm going to select as some sales team, that is Tech4. I'm clicking on save. Now if I go and see the sharing accesses on this particular record, you would be able to see one entry for Tech4. Yes, we have one entry. Let's see who has given this read-only access to the Tech4 by accessing this view button. You would see the reason is read access to seller that we have created, that is custom Apex rowcast. Now I am logging in as a Tech4 user to see whether he is able to access this record or not. So going to the all service request, yes, he is able to access the record that is created by Tech1. and he will be having only the read permission for this record. He will not be able to edit this record because he does not have any other permissions other than read. He will not be able to delete also. I would like to add one more point here, as we are going to give the read permission using the Apex sharing. The original records object, that is service request objects OWD, should be having less access than the read, that is it should have the private. In case at the OWD level itself, if you would have given the public read only or public read write, then here the read itself will not be allowed. In that case, we will get an error. Right now, the OWD for our object service request is private. That is why it is not giving any error when we are giving the read access. Now let's change the OWD of our object as public read only, and let's see what kind of error we will get. So I am going to change it to public read only. Now let me log in as a Tech1 user. Again, I am trying to create one more new record. Vehicle number, and again I am giving the 4 as a seller. Once we save, we will get this an error. It is saying for an organization level itself already he has a read access, and again you are going to give a read access which is not required. In this case, we have to skip this error and allow the save operation on this record. To skip this exception, let's see what is the status code that we are getting by adding the status code to the error. So I'm going here and adding the status code that we can add this condition. With status code. Now if I deploy this and save this, I will get the status code. This is the status code, and exception contains access level. So we can skip this message by adding the if condition. And now let's save this one. User able to save this one. And if you see sharing hierarchy, Tech4 is not listed here. By default, he got the read access using the OWD, so he should be able to read that. The thing that we need to observe here is for Tech4, the read access that we have given using our Apex sharing is not created because already our service request objects OWD is public read only. So that Tech4 user already got the default read access on that record. Now let's consider a scenario. For this record, programmatically we have given the sharing access to LDR2 using a Apex managed sharing technique. Now if I change the owner of this record, actual record, what happens to the shared access via Apex? The answer is Apex managed sharing is not going to revoke. Whatever we have granted accesses using the Apex managed sharing, those records maintained across the record owner changes. Only the manual sharings gets revoked by Salesforce. The field that Salesforce checks here is ROCAS. If the ROCAS value is manual, then only Salesforce revoke those granted access in case of owner change on the actual record. Thanks for watching. We will meet in the next session.